My mother-in-law faked a robbery to steal my jewelry, but my hidden cameras caught everything. Now she's paying the price. I, 28F, have been married to my husband, 30M, for almost 4 years. We live in a cozy 2-bedroom house in a quiet suburb, a place we've been gradually making into our own. Initially, we thought a simple doorbell camera would be enough for basic security, just to keep an eye on packages. But recent events turned our home into the center of a family crisis I never could have predicted. My mother-in-law, Lyle, has always been opinionated. She questioned nearly every decision I made, my cooking, my decor choices, even my work hours. While I attempted to remain courteous, it wasn't easy. My husband often reminded me of her difficult upbringing, suggesting her abrasive personality was shaped by hardship. I tried to empathize and be respectful, yet every visit left me drained. A few months ago, I inherited family jewelry from my grandmother, pieces with immense sentimental value. My own mother was thrilled that I'd keep our family history alive. Miel, however, was strangely fixated on the jewelry's market value. She kept asking if I'd had them appraised or planned on selling. I told her these heirlooms weren't just shiny trinkets, and I'd never part with them. She made some cryptic comment about not letting things go to waste, which at the time I dismissed as another of her odd statements. Over the following weeks, Miel's visits became more frequent. She often arrived unannounced, supposedly to check on my husband or drop off homemade dishes. Yet I noticed her gaze drifting toward our bedroom, hallway, or the small chest on the living room shelf. She'd offhandedly remark, "Is this where you keep that special jewelry? Where you really should lock those up somewhere safe." Her prying felt invasive. I confided in my husband, who shrugged it off as typical nosiness. But I couldn't shake a growing unease, given her repeated interest in my grandmother's keepsakes. We decided to install a few discreet indoor cameras, one near the living room and one in the hallway, framed as a general security upgrade. We never specifically told Elle, not wanting to single her out, and we also liked the idea of extra safety due to occasional porch thefts in the neighborhood. A few days after the cameras were up, Elle stopped by again, unusually friendly. She brought a fancy fruit basket, praised my housekeeping, and seemed to be eyeing my necklace in the living room shelves. At one point, she offered to help me reorganize my closet, which I politely declined. Something about her demeanor made my nerves tingle, but she eventually left without causing trouble. I almost convinced myself I was overreacting, until we got back from a weekend trip to visit my mother. The scene that greeted us was a wreck. Sofa cushions tossed around, a lamp smashed, chairs overturned. Strangely, the front door lock was untouched. My heart sank as I rushed to check the small chest where I'd kept my grandmother's jewelry. It was all gone. Feeling panicked, we called the police. They arrived, took our statements, and looked over the suspiciously intact lock. I recalled our newly installed cameras and hoped they might have captured what really happened. Little did I know that footage would confirm a betrayal that would rock our family. Once the police finished their initial inspection, my husband and I sat down to review the footage from our new indoor cameras. A knot of dread settled in my stomach. Part of me hoped some stranger had just gotten lucky, but a larger part feared Miel's odd obsession might be at the heart of this. We started with a living room camera. We saw normal day-to-day clips of us tidying up and then leaving for the weekend. Several hours later, movement triggered the camera. The intruder wore a hooded jacket, gloves obscuring much of their face. Yet something about the posture and walk felt familiar. My heart pounded. Then the hood shifted just enough to reveal Lyle's face. She moved quietly through our living room like a burglar in a movie. My husband stared at the screen in horror. We watched her ransack the living room in a calculated way, tipping things over, scattering items to simulate a random theft. She made a beeline for the small chest, pulled out the box of heirloom jewelry, and placed it in her bag. Then she moved into the kitchen, pulled open drawers, dumped utensils on the floor, like she was choreographing the perfect break-in. Before leaving, she intentionally knocked over a decorative lamp and messed up the couch cushions. It was painfully deliberate. I felt a wave of anger, shock, and heartbreak all at once. My grandmother's precious heirlooms were now in Isle's hands, and she'd faked a burglary. When the footage ended, my husband buried his head in his hands, repeating, "I can't believe she did this." We double-checked the hallway camera to see if she'd involved anyone else. Sure enough, it showed her quietly entering our bedroom, rummaging in my bedside drawers briefly, then returning to the living room. She didn't seem to find anything else to take, but her intentions were obvious. She was hunting for valuables. Devastation settled over my husband. What do we do now? She's my mother, he asked, eyes brimming with pain. Part of me wanted to call the police right then and there, but I also dreaded the family upheaval this would trigger. Would father-in-law believe us? Would Mael deny everything? My anger demanded justice, yet it felt surreal that this was happening at all. We took a breather, stepping outside for fresh air. Trembling, I called my own mother, telling her through tears what had happened. She was outraged, urging me not to let Mael keep my grandmother's belongings. It gave me the resolve to act. That evening, my husband discreetly called father-in-law Fael and asked him to come by alone, saying we had critical information about the robbery. Fael was worried but complied. I hardly slept, replaying Fael's stealthy moves in my head. Despite all her snide remarks over the years, I never imagined she'd stoop to outright theft. The next morning, Fael arrived. We showed him the incriminating footage. He went pale, asking over and over, "How can this be? Are we sure it's her?" The video, though, left no room for doubt. Eventually, he lowered his head. "I can't defend her," he said, voice shaking. "She needs to be held responsible." With Fael on our side, we devised a plan to recover the jewelry and ensure Mael faced the consequences of her scheme. My husband was torn. He loved her, but felt humiliated and betrayed. Fael insisted on confronting her directly, so he told Mael to come to our place that afternoon under the guise of discussing the robbery. When Elle arrived, she put on a masterclass in false sympathy, hugging my husband, feigning dismay at the broken lamp, and asking if the police had any leads. I stood near the hallway, anger boiling with each insincere word. After a few minutes, Fael gave me a nod. My husband took out a tablet, hit play on the living room footage, and set it on the table. Mael's face morphed from fake concern to stark terror. She tried to speak, but no sound came out. When the clip ended, I spoke plainly. "We know you staged this and stole my grandmother's jewelry. We want it returned." She opened her mouth to deny it, but Elle silenced her sharply. "I've seen enough. Don't lie again." Trapped, Mel's eyes filled with tears. She muttered that she was in financial trouble, that she thought we didn't truly need the jewelry, and that we'd never appreciated her. She clung to anything to rationalize her actions. My husband demanded to know where the jewelry was hidden. She hesitated, scanning the room like she might flee. Elle stepped forward, voice trembling, repeating, "Answer him." Then Elle broke down, sobbing uncontrollably. She confessed she'd stored the items in her basement, planning to sell them bit by bit to clear some debts and supposedly help a friend. None of it lessened the sting of betrayal. Right then, we called the police again, explaining we had new evidence identifying the intruder. Mel went into a panic, pleading with us not to involve law enforcement, promising immediate restitution. But her lies, manipulation, and the sheer significance of my grandmother's heirlooms left me unmoved. I wanted an official record of her theft so she couldn't wriggle out of it or try something similar later. While waiting for the officer, Fael forced Mael to call a trusted neighbor to retrieve the jewelry from her basement. She reluctantly complied, mumbling instructions. The neighbor soon arrived with a sealed shoebox, which Fael opened. Inside, wrapped in tissue paper, were my necklaces, bracelets, and rings, thankfully undamaged. When the police got there, we showed them the camera footage and recounted the whole ordeal. Mael looked petrified, stuttering for pity. The officer asked if we wanted to press charges. My husband and I locked eyes, both feeling the weight of this decision. But Mael had crossed a line that destroyed trust. I told the officer, yes, I wanted to file a formal complaint. Mael shrieked, "How can you do this? I'm family." She tried guilt-tripping us, but Fael interjected firmly, "You did this to yourself." My anger overshadowed any guilt. She had staged a crime in our home for personal gain. If we let her walk away scot-free, who knew what she might do next? In the aftermath, the family was thrown into turmoil. Some relatives were outraged at us for pressing charges, insisting we should keep such matters private. Others, upon seeing the footage, voiced support, agreeing Mael had gone too far. Fael, devastated by her actions, temporarily moved out of their shared home to reassess the marriage. My husband wrestled with sadness and fury, unsure how to reconcile the loving mother he once knew with the woman on that video. I tried to remain firm but was often overwhelmed. My mother called daily to reassure me, I'd done right by protecting the heirlooms. I agreed that EL needed a significant wake-up call, yet it was painful to think we'd taken legal action against family. Legally, the case proceeded rather straightforwardly. Armed with the camera evidence, prosecutors charged Maëlle with theft and burglary for entering our home with intent to steal. Because she staged a crime scene and initially led us, and the police believe we'd been robbed by a stranger, she also faced consequences for providing false information to law enforcement. Her attorney worked out a plea agreement, including restitution for the property damage and a court-imposed fine. She returned the jewelry already in our possession and avoided jail time by accepting probation and mandatory community service. Some relatives wanted us to drop charges after recovering the jewelry, but I felt that would only validate her manipulative behavior. My husband, though deeply hurt, supported the stance that she had to face the legal and moral consequences. At one point, Maëlle showed up at our door sobbing, begging us to help reduce her penalties, claiming she acted out of desperation. She promised she'd change if we appealed to the court. I calmly told her it was no longer in our hands. Her choices led here. She left angrily, muttering insults at me under her breath. Over time, tensions cooled a bit. I'll eventually return home, though their marriage remained on shaky ground. He told my husband they planned to seek counseling. Maëlle's once solid status in the extended family eroded. People who had defended her before now kept their distance, wary of her manipulations. I kept my grandmother's jewelry in a more secure spot and felt immense relief it was intact. Yet there's a lingering sadness that a family bond had to shatter over greed. We improved our home's security even more. An upgraded alarm system, better locks, no longer feeling any guilt about overreacting. As the dust settled, I learned a tough but vital lesson. Sometimes protecting yourself and your cherished possessions means holding even close relatives accountable. My husband and I remain united. We openly discuss how to handle future family events if Maëlle is present. We refuse to let her betrayal define our home life. In the end, Maëlle faced legal repercussions and social fallout for staging a burglary and stealing priceless heirlooms. Her attempt to disguise a family theft as an outside job would expose the moment we checked our hidden cameras. Though it hurt to press charges, I don't regret standing up for myself or safeguarding my grandmother's legacy. We've emerged wiser, more cautious, and determined not to be victims again.